Otilia comes out of a class test. I think it was the first class test, if I'm not mistaken, of a year or two ago. So you can see whilst we're working through Otilia that your test is definitely not more difficult than what it was in the past. So you just have to upskill to a great extent. Otilia Traders started trading as a small family business in the tire trade industry during the spring of 2011. They maintain all accounting records in written hard copies, which were posted from source documents into subsidiary journals and booked to the applicable ledgers. Only Otilia, the owner, got stuck to the accounting methods that she learned at high school. Sounds familiar, eh? And most of the cash payment transactions were done per check instead of electronic transfers. Polly had an agreement with the suppliers to continue with this payment method and also accept check payments from some customers. In September 2015, the business was a registered VAT vendor. You may assume a VAT rate of 14% is applicable. Important. Good. Inventory is recorded by using the perpetual method. Important. With a profit margin of 30% on selling prices. So how does our formula look like? If it's 30% on selling prices, let's write it over there. It means it is 70 plus 30 equals 100. It's 30% on selling prices. Important. Good. Otilia also started to apply a policy of allowing a 10% settlement discount on customer invoices that are paid 20 days after the invoice date. Consequently, Otilia had introduced a policy of using allowance accounts because customers always pay in time to utilize settlement discounts. Now, that's a nice way of telling you that for each and every sales transaction, you have credit sales transaction, that is, you have to make an allowance for settlement discount. This policy was extended to make sure that suppliers are also being paid in time to receive the benefit of any settlement discounts granted by them. So it's not only on debtors. What they say is if we are going to pay a supplier, then we will also make use of settlement discounts, and that's a nice way of telling you that you also have to make provision for allowance for settlement discount when you purchase anything. Mary Miracle, who was the appointed bookkeeper since 2011, resigned in May 2017 as she started with a family of her own, and Sammy Sorry was appointed to continue with the duties. On 30 June 2017, Sammy could not get the trial balance to balance, and your help was called for. After further investigation, you discovered the following mistakes. Now let's have a look what you have to do. For suppliers transactions, and that is the first transactions that are actually listed here, errors emissions from suppliers related transactions. For those transactions, you have to explain briefly what effect, if any, each of the given mistakes will have on the applicable balances of the trial balance. Now, the trial balance will be affected by the creditor's control account balance and or the creditor's ledger. So it's either the impact on the creditor's control account or on the creditor's ledger. Prepare the journal entries needed to correct the errors where necessary. Use the following format. So I hope you can read by now. This is what your answer should look like. So let's do the supplier transactions first. You have to have a transaction number. There's 1 to I don't know how much. The effect on the totals of the trial balance, so that's another words of saying the effect on the creditor's control account and or the creditor's ledger, that would be the individual creditor's accounts in the creditor's ledger. General journal, that is when I have to pass a journal on the account name. Must I debit an amount or credit an amount, and if so, what are those amounts? The total column in the creditor's journal was undercosted by 1,000 Rand. Would that have an impact on the creditor's ledger? No. Because why? I posted the creditor's accounts in the creditor's ledger on a line-by-line basis from the creditor's journal. but it will have an impact on the posting that I make at the end of the month to the creditor's control account. Because the creditor's journal is the sum total of all the credit invoices received during the month, and if that was undercosted by R1,000, my credits in my credit control account is undercosted, so it's too little with R1,000. So the credit total posted to the creditor's control account trial balance was R1,000 too little. How are we going to rectify that? We are going to credit the creditor's control account. It's just a correcting entry with R1,000. No effect on the trial number 2. That's the next one, sorry. An invoice for R6,700 received from NMOS was entered into NMOS's account as 7,600, although the correct amount was reflected in the creditor's journal. If the creditor's journal is correct, it means the creditor's control account is correct. However, if the line item is wrong and it was wrongly posted to the individual creditor's account, I have to make an adjustment in his own account. It was an overestimation or of the amount of the invoice, so therefore his account was credited with 7,600 instead of 6,700. So therefore I'm going to take the difference out of his account. So there's no effect on the trial balance, but the creditor's account and the creditor's ledger will be adjusted to reflect the correct amount. So in NMOS's account, it's a single entry in the creditor's ledger. I will debit his account with R900. Then number 3. Number 3 is the more catchy one. Sammy was uncertain of how the 8% settlement discount, which he is entitled to if the invoice was settled within 10 days, should be treated in the following transaction. Invoice number 253. 10 typist chairs for office use were purchased for an advertised VAT exclusive price of R640 per chair. As a result, remember it's 10 chairs, as a result of the quantity purchased, JK Suppliers granted an additional 2% trade discount on the chairs on the purchase date of 14 June. Sammy did not post this transaction at all. So what is our first step? Determine the invoice price. There were 10 chairs, the normal price R640, but we received a 2% trade discount, so it's 10 times 640 times 98%, and that is VAT exclusive. Then we still have to add 14% VAT. They told us to work with 40% in order to derive at the invoice price. So the invoice amount, 640 times 10 times 98%, that's the VAT exclusive amount, times 1.14 equals 7150. Now, I didn't post this at all. So obviously, our creditor's control account would need to be credited with this invoice of 7150, as well as his individual account in the creditor's ledger should also be updated with this invoice on the credit side of his own account with 750. On the trial balance, it would not have had any impact. Why not? Because it was a total debit and credit entry that was submitted. And guys, that is why you can't always work on balances on the trial balance, because if there is a double mistake that you've made, it will cancel each other out. Okay, so what we would have done is that furniture needed to be debited, its office chairs, it's not inventory, it's office furniture, with the VAT exclusive amount exclusive of the 8% settlement discount. So number 1, determine the invoice amount. Now the invoice amount is not the 6270, the invoice amount, I just want to add here, this is the VAT exclusive invoice amount. The invoice amount is 7150. So 7150 will be into the creditor's ledger in his own individual account as well as in the creditor's control account, statement of financial position, 7150. That's the VAT exclusive amount, which is the 6272. and break it down into its two legs. 92% will go to furniture, so that is where the 5770 comes from. 8% will go to an allowance for settlement discount, 502. Then I can claim VAT on this invoice, and that is the difference between the invoiced amount of 7150 less the 6272. And that gives us a VAT input that we can claim of 878 Rand. So this is a normal transaction that was just submitted. We just have to record it. It is entitled an 8% settlement discount. It's our policy to make provision for an allowance of settlement discount on all creditors' transactions. Great. Then the second part of the question, it's actually here where the problem comes in. On 22 June, now when did the first transaction happen? On the 14th of June. So 8 days after that, a check payment of 7296 was, and that you have 10 days to settle, to make use of the settlement discount. So 8 days after the invoice was issued, they made a check payment, or EFT, doesn't matter, of 7296 to JK to settle the transaction. The bank account was credited and the creditor's control account in the general ledger was debited with a check amount. Now, his own individual account should also have been debited with this check amount of 7296. So what is the first thing that I should actually determine? Number one, did he settle within the settlement period? And we have already established that he did. He settled on the 22nd of June, which is well within the 10 days that he had to settle it to make use of the 8% settlement discount. Now, in the A part of the question, we have determined the invoice value. So let's see, and you can clearly see that he already paid an amount more than the invoice value. So at this point of time, if we had a T account, the T account would have looked like that. The invoice value would have been the credit on his account of 7150. He settled that amount and he paid more than the outstanding amount. He paid 7296. So therefore, a debit balance of 146 originated. But that's not good enough. We have to determine what is the amount that he should have paid this creditor if he paid the correct amount. Now, if he paid the correct amount, it would have been the invoice amount, 7150, multiplied by 92%, because he is entitled on the 8% settlement discount. So instead of paying him 7296, he should only have paid him 7578. So what should have been the debit balance that was reflected here on his, that must have been reflected in his creditor's account? Not 146. The invoice, he paid 7296, but he should only have paid 7578. So the actual amount that he overpaid was 718 Rand. So what is lying currently in his account? Only 146 Rand, which is not right. That 146 Rand should have been 718 Rand. So the difference between 718, what his balance should have been, and 146, what his balance actually is 572. So I still need to pause that 572 adjustment in my accounts. When we recorded the initial purchase transaction of these office chairs, we created an allowance for settlement discount of 502 Rand. Is that settlement discount allowance account still applicable? No, it isn't, because we've utilized that 502 Rand when we actually made payment within the settlement period. So we have to take that 502 Rand out of the books. Now, are we going to take it to furniture? No, furniture is correct. Furniture is already lying at 92% of the invoice value, VAT exclusive, which is correct. So we cannot transfer that 502 Rand to the 5770. But we should pass an entry against our creditor's account. So therefore, that 502 Rand is going to be posted against our our creditors account on the debit side. So to take it out here in the initial transaction, we would have credited the allowance for settlement discount and we will debit our creditors account with 502 Rand. Remember, we have received a settlement discount now. So according to the receiver of revenue, we have to pay VAT on that settlement discount. So 14% on 502 equals 70 Rand. So we will have to make provision. There we took the allowance for settlement discount out of our books by crediting that account. Here we have account for the VAT on the discount that we've received, 70 Rand. And there you see it's 572. So that 572, which is those two entries there, is going to be debited against our creditors control account. And now when you add up your creditors control account balance, you will see that you now have the correct debit balance overpayment of 718 Rand. Let's quickly check, is my creditors account correct now? Yes, because there we have actually established that we've overpaid with 780 Rand, so that must be reflected in the balance. Is our furniture account correct? Yes, it's only 92% of the VAT exclusive amount, so that is right. Is our VAT right? Well, that VAT there is right. It's the difference between 7150 and 6272, so that VAT is correct. My allowance is out of my books, so that is also correct. My creditor account is also out of my books because I have debited that account with 7296. So that cancelled out the original entry. The 7296 in his account is also correct because that was the actual payment that we've made. So we credited bank and we debited this account. And here, that 718 Rand, that is also correct to be reflected as the overpayment in the creditors account because here we have proved that. We said we should have paid him 7150 times 92%. We did pay him 7296. So the difference between what we should have paid and what we actually paid represents an overpayment of 718 Rand. The amount of the total column of 4,500 Rand in the creditors allowances or the purchasers returns journal was credited against the creditors control account. The individual line items were correct and correctly posted, so there's no impact on the creditors ledger. But because the total column of the creditors allowance account was credited against the creditors control account, it should have been debited against the creditors control account. So to rectify it, I will have to take it out as a debit twice against the account. So the creditors control account would be rectified by taking it out twice on the debit side of the creditors control account. And then number 5, credit note number 47 was issued by JK Suppliers on 29 June 2017 on one typist chair, well after this transaction, that had missing parts on assembling it. Sammy also ignored this document as it linked to the invoice and the payment of JK, which he was uncertain about. So now again, there's a further debit that will be posted on his account. So the problem is just at what amount. Now, the VAT exclusive amount per chair was 640 Rand. Well, we can only multiply it by 98% because that was the actual invoice amount, but we have already paid for it. And when we paid for it, we only paid 92% of the outstanding invoice. So the credit note cannot be issued for a higher amount than the one that we've paid. So the amount that we've paid is 640 VAT exclusive times 98% times 92%. And that will be the credit against our furniture account. Then the VAT will be 14% on that account, 81, and the debit that will go against our creditors control account will be 658, which will be 640, the VAT exclusive amount, multiplied by 98% to take account of the 2% trade discount, multiplied by 92% to take account of the 8% settlement discount utilized, multiplied by 1.14 to get the VAT inclusive figure of 658. Great, so that was all the supplier accounts Then the question wants you to do something with customer accounts. Now let's see. Prepare for customer transactions. Prepare the debtors control account for June after all the errors, adjustments, and omissions have been considered. Determine the closing balance of the account and then prepare a corrected list of debtors as at 30 June 2017. So the debtors control for the month of June as well as the debtors list. So we have the debtors control account here. Oh goodness, if we look at the debtors control account that they gave us, obviously there are some funny stuff going on. We have debtors allowances on the debit side of that account. We have got hourly checks on the credit side of that account. So before we start, we are not going to use this incorrect balance. Let's look further on further information that they gave us. They say the list of correct debtors balances as at 1 June. Customers with debit balances 213,700 and customers with credit balances 7,200. Now we can assume that that must have been after we've rectified all the mistakes of the previous month. That should have been the opening balance of our debtors control account. The debit balances of 213,700 less the credit balances of 7,200 would have given us a net balance of 206,500. You could have put them separately in the accounts as well. Good. Then they tell us that the receipt issued to B. Daniels for 8,700 Rand cash received was recorded correctly in the cash book receipts journal, but it was posted to his account as 7,800. Now, if it's correct in the cash book receipts journal, it would have been posted correctly to the debtors control account. However, to his individual account, there is a 900 Rand missing. It should have been a credit in his account of 900 Rand, which has not yet been posted. So if we go to the debtors list, we want to say, well, that 900 Rand needs to be posted against his account. His original balance was 19,800 Rand. And we start off with these balances that they gave us according to the debtors list. So you're going to duplicate those balances as is. You're going to start with his balance of 19,800 and you're going to rectify his balance to deduct the 900 Rand. His balance should only have been 18,900. Okay, then number 3, Sammy posted the sales returns journal to the debtors account from the debtors allowances journal. So remember here, we had an entry 8421 debtors allowances journal. Now that is sales returns. Now we've already said to each other, it should not be a debit entry. And over and above the fact that it's not a debit entry, they also told us that they posted the sales returns journal to the debtors account. What columns, totals, should he have posted to the debtors control account? The total column or the debtors column? It's the same column. Either the total column, you can call it either the debtors column or the total column. So the sales returns total will be a VAT exclusive amount. So if we're going to rectify our debtors control account, we would have had debtors allowances. But now remember that our debtors allowances as well as our debtors journal have a couple of columns now because we sit with a 10% settlement discount. Remember, yeah? Let's just go back here. Otilia has also started to apply a policy of allowing 10% settlement discount on customer invoices that are paid within 20 days after the invoice date. Consequently, Otilia has introduced a policy of using allowance accounts because customers always pay in time to utilize settlement discounts. So my debtors column as well as my debtors journal as well as my debtors allowances journal will have a total column or debtors column. It will have a sales column or sales returns column. It will have a VAT column and it will have an allowance for settlement discount column. So what will go into the total or debtors column? The invoice value. What will go into the VAT column? The VAT on the invoice or the credit note if it's a sales return. What will go to my sales returns journal? only 90% of the VAT exclusive invoice value, and 10% of the VAT exclusive invoice value will go to my settlement for allowances, settlement discount account, allowance for settlement discount account. So if we posted the sales returns journal to the debtors account, and we are going to correct it now, we're going to repost that entry on the credit side. We cannot use this amount of 8421 as is, because that only represents 90% of the VAT exclusive invoice value, or the VAT exclusive credit note value. So we want to post to the debtors control account the VAT inclusive credit note or invoice value. So therefore, if we want to make that entry, we're going to start off with the 8421. We are going to gross it up to 100% of the VAT exclusive amount. And then we're going to multiply it by 1.14 to get the total value of the credit note. So 8421 is only 90% of the VAT exclusive amount. So we gross it up to get 100% of the VAT exclusive amount, and then we multiply it by 1.14 to get the total VAT inclusive value of credit notes issued, 10,667. Now, this entry only affected the debtors control account because the individual line items in the debtors allowances journal were posted to the individual debtors accounts, and as far as we can see, there was nothing wrong with it. Then number 4, the total of the sales column in the debtors journal was undercosted by 200 Rand. Now don't let it catch you out. We don't post the sales column of the debtors journal to the debtors control account. What column do we post? The debtors or the total column of that account. So this one had no impact on any debtors control account or individual account. Number 5, an entry in respect of sales returns of 1,000 Rand as per the credit note, inclusive of VAT, by G. Hamilton was correctly entered into the debtors allowances journal, but posted to the wrong side of Hamilton's own account. So the debtors control account was correct, obviously, because the totals of the debtors allowances journal were correct. So all we have to do, and it is a VAT inclusive amount, we will have to, it was posted to the wrong side. It is sales return, so if it was posted to the wrong side, it was posted on the debit side. So that means we have to rectify it against his own account. So Hamilton, his balance was 8,000 Rand according to the list. If we're going to take out 1,000 Rand, it's only going to eliminate the mistake. So we will have to take it out 2 times 1,000 Rand. The first one to take out the mistake and the second one to post the credit note. So his final balance on his account would be 6,000 Rand. Then number 6. No entry was made in the ledgers for the transfer of the account of W. Westman with a credit balance of 6,400 Rand from his account in the debtors ledger to his account in the creditors ledger. There's Westman. There you can see he's got a credit balance of 6,400 Rand. So in order to get that out on both his account and the debtors control account, we will have to debit those accounts and credit the creditors control account as well as the creditors individual account. So Westman will become a 0 balance there, and in my account here, transfer of Westman credit balance, I'm going to debit this account in order to get it out of this account. It was a credit balance, so I'm going to debit this account and I'm going to credit my creditors account. An invoice issued to Bonga at 13 June was expected to be settled within 10 days in order to qualify for the 10% settlement discount. The settlement was done on 22 June and D. Bonga paid the settlement amount of 15,692 per EFT into the current bank account of Otilia's. The invoice was correctly recorded in the debtors control account, but only the cash received in the bank was credited against the debtors control account on 22nd of June. Now, clearly, it is within 10 days that he has settled his account. So he has made use of the 10% settlement discount. So the amount that he has paid was 15,692. So that we debited bank with 15,692, that is correct, but the amount that we credited to the accounts, that amount is not correct. So where's it? Bonga. We received 15,692 from him, and that was in the account, and that's all right. But we must remember, we must take out the settlement discount that we have actually created when we did the sales transaction, and we must also pay or claim the VAT on the settlement discount that we have allowed to Bonga. So the first thing that we have to determine is what was the outstanding balance, and the outstanding balance was 15,692 divided by 90%. Now, therefore, the amount that was initially posted to the allowance for settlement discount was 10% of the VAT exclusive amount. So if we're going to gross this amount up, we will get 100% of the amount owed by him, VAT inclusive. So the allowance for settlement discount, we would have taken out the VAT and then multiplied by 10%, and that is the amount that we would have taken out of the allowance for settlement discount. And then we would have claimed 14% on that amount as VAT input. So therefore, 14% of 1,529 would have given us 214 Rand. In the total credit that still needs to be posted to his account is a credit of 1,743. So in Bonga's account, also in his individual account, we have to take out that 1,743, which is the settlement discount inclusive of VAT. That's the VAT portion, that's the settlement discount portion that he was entitled on because he settled his account in time to make use of the settlement discount. The amounts on the credit side of J. Mars's account was undercosted by 4,000 Rand. So on the credit side of his account was undercosted by 4,000 Rand. So Mars, I have to reduce his account balance with 4,000 Rand. It's credits reduces the debtors balance. On 30 June, a VAT inclusive delivery fee of 180 Rand was paid on behalf of a debtor C. Calvin from the Petty Cash Journal, but not posted to the ledgers. Now, that means it has to be posted to his individual account as well as the debtor's control account. So when we look at his individual account, that 180 Rand, he still owes us that money, so we have to increase his balance with 180 Rand, as well as in the debtor's control account, we have to post that 180 Rand, which will increase our debtor's control account. On 30 June, the VAT inclusive delivery fee of 100, that's that one that we've just done, number 10. Al Lindiwe paid his account of 10,000 Rand and he received a 10% discount, which was recorded correctly in the cash book receipts and general journals. However, the discount was not posted to his individual account. So the debtor's control account is right, his individual account is short of a discount credit entry of 10% of 10,000 Rand, which is going to reduce his own balance with 1,000 Rand. So there, Lindiwe minus 1,000 Rand will give him his actual outstanding balance of 52,800. Let's now quickly go to the debtor's control account as they gave it to us and see whether there are any other entries that we still have to record in our debtor's control account. The balance we took care of, debtors allowances we took care of. Here is the sales for the month, 286,158, and that is correct that it actually appears on the debit side of that account. So there is the sales, 286,158. We go to the credit side, bank VAT and settlement discount allowed, 283,771. Well, if that's the total according to the cash book receipts journal, then it means it needs to be posted in our account. So that is bank settlement discount and VAT on it, 283,771. So we still have to post that in our debtors control account. Here's the RD check for 3,000 Rand. RD checks does not appear on the credit side because it is a check that bounced. So that must be on the debit side, 3,000 Rand RD checks, which equals the bank. And then we can work out the new balance on our debtors control account. So if we look at our debtors control account, we've done that, we've done that, done that, we've done that, we've done that, that one we've done, that one we've done, that one we've done. And now if we're going to balance this account off, we're going to end up with a closing balance on the account of 206,057. If you go to your creditors list and you add all the balances together after you've done the calculations, you're also going to end up with a total of the list of 206,057, which balances back to my debtors control account, and I'm a happy chappy.